Michael Jordan sees a kid bullied for playing in old shoes. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Michael Jordan was born on February 17, 1963, in Wilmington, North Carolina, to James and Dolores Jordan. His early life, though filled with family support and love, was far from easy. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood, Jordan was exposed to the realities of hard work, determination, and the pursuit of something greater than what you start with. From an early age, it was clear that Michael had a unique drive. Whether it was at home, on the playground, or in the gym, he always pushed himself and those around him to do better. Jordan's childhood was one that encouraged competition. His siblings, especially his older brother Larry, played a significant role in shaping his competitive spirit. Larry, an accomplished athlete in his own right, would often challenge Michael, pushing him to become better, faster, and more determined. This sibling rivalry became a key element in Jordan's growth, as he was constantly forced to prove himself in ways that many others didn't experience. It wasn't just about basketball, it was about winning, pushing yourself, and coming out on top in any situation. But despite his natural talent, Michael Jordan was not always seen as a guaranteed star. During his sophomore year at Laney High School, he tried out for the varsity basketball team, but the coach cut him from the roster. This was a crushing blow for the young Jordan, who had dreamed of representing his school on the varsity level. It was a difficult moment, one that could have broken many others, but Jordan's response was defining. Instead of retreating into defeat, he turned it into fuel. He began working harder than ever, spending hours in the gym, perfecting his shooting, his footwork, and his overall game. This determination paid off. By the time he returned to try out for the team as a junior, Jordan had grown both physically and mentally. His skills had improved, and he had earned the respect of his coaches and teammates. He made the varsity team and quickly became the star player, leading Laney High to victory and solidifying his reputation as one of the top young players in the area. The sting of being cut in his sophomore year never left him, but it shaped him in ways that would define his career. It was a reminder that nothing was guaranteed and that success was earned. By his senior year, Jordan had become a household name in Wilmington. His performances on the court were becoming legendary, and scouts from all over the country were beginning to take notice. College coaches flocked to Laney High to watch him play, and his dream of playing at the highest level was starting to become a reality. But despite his rising fame, Jordan remained grounded. He knew the work wasn't finished. He hadn't made it to the NBA yet, and until he did, he wasn't going to let up. His hard work and drive ultimately led him to the University of North Carolina in 1981. At UNC, under the guidance of legendary coach Dean Smith, Jordan began to learn the finer points of the game. Smith was known for his disciplined approach to basketball, emphasizing teamwork, fundamentals, and building character. Jordan had always been a player who relied on his natural talent, but under Smith's tutelage, he began to develop a more well-rounded game. He learned that greatness wasn't just about scoring points, it was about understanding the game, being patient, and letting the game come to him. Jordan's freshman year at UNC was a turning point in his development. While many players would have been content to take a back seat to more seasoned players, Jordan wasn't one to wait for his chance. In the 1982 NCAA championship game, with less than 20 seconds left and the score tied, Jordan received a pass from his teammate, James Worthy, and nailed a jump shot to give UNC the win. That moment, his first game-winning shot on the biggest stage, became a defining moment in his career, and it marked the start of his rise as a player who would always show up when it mattered most. The game-winning shot in the NCAA championship wasn't just about the shot itself, it was about the confidence Jordan exuded in that moment. He had the composure and poise to take the big shot, something that would become synonymous with his name in the years that followed. That year, he was named NCAA Freshman of the Year, and as his college career continued, his legend only grew. At UNC, Jordan wasn't just another player, he was quickly becoming the face of the program. Throughout his time at UNC, Jordan continued to refine his game. He worked relentlessly on his footwork, shooting mechanics, and defense. By his junior year, He was a consensus All-American and was considered by many to be the best player in college basketball. His relentless work ethic on and off the court was beginning to turn heads in the professional basketball world, but Jordan wasn't solely focused on the NBA yet. He was still committed to improving and helping his team win. But after leading UNC to another successful season, Jordan made a life-changing decision. He declared for the 1984 NBA draft. The decision to leave college early wasn't an easy one, but Jordan knew it was the next step in his journey. He had proven himself on the college level, and now it was time to prove himself in the professional ranks. The NBA was a different world, a faster, more competitive environment, but Jordan had always been a player who thrived on challenges. He was ready for the next chapter, but he knew the path ahead would require even more work, sacrifice, and resilience. In the 1984 NBA draft, Jordan was selected third overall by the Chicago Bulls, a team that had been mired in mediocrity for years. The Bulls had talent, but they lacked a true superstar who could elevate them to championship contention. Jordan's arrival in Chicago was a turning point for the franchise, but it was also a new beginning for him. The pressure to succeed in the NBA was immense, and Jordan would have to prove himself once again. He was no longer just a college star, he was stepping into a league filled with established legends, and his journey had only just begun. The early days of Jordan's NBA career were a mixture of triumph and struggle. He quickly became the Bulls' top scorer, showcasing his athleticism and flair on the court, but the team itself was still lacking in key areas. Jordan was a dominant player, but he wasn't yet the leader of a championship-caliber team. The road ahead would require more than just individual brilliance. Jordan had to learn how to win at the highest level and lead a team to greatness. The lessons he would learn over the next few years would lay the foundation for the dynasty that would follow. But even as Jordan faced these early challenges, one thing was certain: he wasn't going to stop. He wasn't going to let anything or anyone hold him back. His competitive fire, which had been lit at an early age, was burning brighter than ever. Jordan was on a mission, and he wasn't going to rest until he achieved his goal. It wasn't just about basketball, it was about proving to the world that he was one of the greatest to ever play the game. And with every game, every shot, and every victory, Jordan was one step closer to realizing that dream. As Michael Jordan's high school years unfolded, he began to embrace basketball not just as a sport but as his path to greatness. It wasn't always a given that he would become the icon he is today. Like many others, Jordan faced his share of setbacks, but it was how he responded to those challenges that would ultimately define his career. One of his earliest lessons in perseverance came in a moment that would be formative for him both as a player and as a person. The year was 1979, and Jordan, still a sophomore, had been eagerly awaiting his chance to make the varsity basketball team at Laney High School in Wilmington, North Carolina. He had been a standout athlete, excelling in multiple sports, but basketball was where he felt most at home. His talent had begun to catch the eye of local coaches, and he believed he had worked hard enough to earn a spot on the varsity squad. However, when the final roster was announced, Jordan's name wasn't on it. At first, Jordan couldn't believe it. He had always been competitive, and making the varsity team was supposed to be the next logical step in his progression as an athlete. He felt humiliated and frustrated, but more than anything, he felt a deep sense of disbelief. Here he was, a player who had always worked harder than anyone else, and yet, he was overlooked. His dreams seemed dashed in an instant. The emotions were raw, but Jordan wasn't one to wallow in defeat. He could have walked away from the game. He could have let that rejection be the end of his story. But instead, he did something that would lay the groundwork for everything that followed. He channeled the disappointment into motivation. Jordan made a promise to himself in that moment. He would not let this setback define him. If he wanted to play on the varsity team, he would have to prove that he was good enough. No one would doubt him again. Determined, Jordan began spending every available moment in the gym. He worked on his jump shot, his ball handling skills, and his conditioning. He wasn't just practicing, he was trying to turn every weakness into a strength. His competitive nature meant that failure, while painful, was always a stepping stone to success. He would never forget the feeling of being cut from the team, and that pain would push him to a level of commitment few players could match. By the time his junior year rolled around, Jordan had transformed. He had grown stronger, faster, and more refined as a player. His drive to prove that he belonged on the varsity team, and eventually in the NBA, was unwavering. When the next round of tryouts came, Jordan made the team. No one was going to cut him now. He had earned his spot, and he was ready to make an impact. Jordan quickly became the star of Laney's basketball team. His leadership on the court was clear, and his incredible work ethic became legendary among his teammates. He played with an intensity that few could match, and that intensity was contagious. What Jordan had learned from being cut wasn't just how to play better basketball, it was how to take control of his destiny. Instead of blaming others or letting his frustration consume him, he turned that pain into purpose, and it paid off. But even as Jordan flourished on the basketball court, he never lost sight of what drove him. Every game, every practice was an opportunity to prove to everyone, most importantly, himself, that he was destined for greatness. His high school years would become a microcosm of his career, a series of setbacks, challenges, and moments of triumph, all bound together by his unrelenting will to succeed. While Jordan was excelling in high school basketball, college recruiters were beginning to take notice. The University of North Carolina was one of the most prestigious college basketball programs in the country, and Jordan's skill and potential made him an attractive recruit. But getting into a program like UNC wasn't easy, and the competition was fierce. Jordan wasn't a guaranteed recruit. His dream of playing at a top university would require more than just raw talent. It would require him to continue pushing himself. UNC's head coach, Dean Smith, recognized the potential in Jordan and extended an offer to him in 1981. Jordan made the decision to leave Wilmington and head to Chapel Hill, where the next stage of his journey would unfold. His time at UNC would become a turning point in his development, not just as a player, but as a leader. Smith's coaching philosophy emphasized teamwork and unselfish play, which challenged Jordan's natural tendencies. He had always been someone who could take over a game with his individual brilliance, but at UNC, he learned how to balance that brilliance with the need for teamwork and collective success. Jordan's freshman year was one of growth and adjustment. He wasn't the focal point of the team. UNC had veterans like James Worthy and Sam Perkins, but Jordan's presence was already felt. He quickly earned respect for his work ethic, his ability to perform in the clutch, and his basketball IQ. It was during this freshman season that Jordan made his mark in college basketball, notably hitting the game-winning shot in the 1982 NCAA championship against Georgetown. That shot became iconic, a moment that would forever define his career. More importantly, it showed the world that Michael Jordan was more than just a talented player. He was a player who thrived under pressure, who had the mental toughness to deliver when it mattered most. After that season, Jordan's confidence grew. He wasn't just a player on a successful team, he was emerging as a player who would change the game. As he entered his sophomore year, it was clear that Jordan was ready to take on an even larger role at UNC. His growth in college basketball was about more than just individual success. It was about learning how to lead, how to use his talent to elevate those around him, and how to combine his skill with his fierce determination to win. Jordan's college career at UNC was a crucial chapter in his path to the NBA. It was there that he honed the skills, mentality, and leadership abilities that would define him for the rest of his career. More than just a skilled player, Jordan emerged from college with the ability to handle the immense pressure that would come with being the best basketball player in the world. By the time he declared for the 1984 NBA draft, Jordan had become not only the best player in college basketball, but also one of the most highly anticipated prospects in the history of the sport. The 1984 NBA draft was the next step in Jordan's journey, and it marked the beginning of a new chapter. But as Jordan soon found out, this was just the start of a much larger story, a story that would be filled with rivalries, challenges, and moments of triumph that would push him to be the best. As Jordan entered the NBA, he was not just the most talented player on the floor, he was ready to prove that he had the will, the mentality, and the leadership to become the greatest. His journey had just begun, but his story was already unfolding with the potential for something legendary. Michael Jordan's entry into the NBA was more than just a new chapter, it was a beginning that would change the entire landscape of the sport. In 1984, when Jordan was selected third overall by the Chicago Bulls, it was clear that he wasn't just a college star, he was about to make his mark in the professional world. But this journey wouldn't be smooth sailing. Jordan's rookie season was a mix of overwhelming success and inevitable challenges, and it tested him in ways that would lay the foundation for everything that followed. Jordan's arrival in Chicago was met with high expectations. The Bulls were a team in flux, struggling to find their place in the NBA. Despite the presence of solid players like Orlando Woolridge and Dave Corzine, they were far from being a championship contender. The team's leadership was inconsistent, and it was clear that the Bulls needed a player who could step up and take control. Enter Michael Jordan, a young phenom with unmatched athleticism and a hunger for greatness. He wasn't just coming to play, he was coming to change the culture of the franchise. From the first game, Jordan's impact was undeniable. He scored 16 points in his NBA debut, showing glimpses of the brilliance that would define his career. He was quick, explosive, and dynamic, with a game that combined athleticism with a growing basketball IQ. His scoring ability was evident, but it was his competitive fire that stood out most. Jordan didn't just want to be good, he wanted to be the best, and it showed in every play, every practice, and every moment on the court. Despite his individual success, the Bulls were struggling as a team. Jordan was a star, but he was still learning how to operate within the confines of the NBA. The team was far from championship ready, and Jordan had to carry the load almost entirely on his own. His numbers were impressive, averaging over 28 points per game. He quickly became one of the most exciting players in the league. But the team's lack of cohesion, particularly on defense, kept the Bulls from competing at the highest level. Jordan was learning quickly. His first season was a crash course in the realities of the NBA. He was playing against the best athletes in the world, and his individual brilliance wasn't always enough to overcome the lack of team chemistry. In many ways, this was a turning point for Jordan. He could have been content with his personal success. He was already one of the top scorers in the league, but Jordan wasn't satisfied with just being a great player. He wanted to win, and that meant learning how to make everyone around him better. As the 1984-85 season progressed, the cracks in the Bulls' foundation began to show. Despite Jordan's spectacular play, the team struggled to put together consistent performances. They finished the season with a 38-44 record, which, while an improvement over previous years, was nowhere near the level of success Jordan aspired to. He was frustrated, not just with the team's lack of progress but with his own inability to lift them to championship contention. Despite the team's struggles, Jordan's talent was undeniable. By the end of the season, he was selected to the All-Star game, cementing his status as one of the league's rising stars. His scoring ability was like nothing anyone had seen before. He could attack the basket with an explosive first step, finish through contact, and make plays in the open court that left fans in awe. But even as his individual success grew, Jordan knew that the Bulls needed more. He couldn't do it all himself. The offseason of 1985 marked a turning point in Jordan's development. He began to realize that in order to reach the next level, he needed help. It wasn't just about scoring points, it was about building a team that could contend. Jordan's competitive nature was pushing him to demand more from his teammates, and that drive would soon begin to take shape. Enter Phil Jackson, who would become the coach that helped turn the Bulls into a dynasty. When Jackson was hired in 1989, he brought with him a new philosophy, the triangle offense. Jackson's system wasn't about isolation plays or individual brilliance. It was about creating balance, spacing, and teamwork. This was the philosophy that would unlock Jordan's potential as both a scorer and a playmaker. But it wasn't an immediate fix. The Bulls had to learn to adapt to Jackson's approach, and Jordan, who had spent years focusing on his own scoring ability, had to embrace the idea of trusting his teammates. Jordan's transition into a team-first mentality was gradual. Early in his career, he was known for his scoring prowess, but as he learned to share the ball and trust his teammates, the Bulls' offense began to flow more effectively. Scottie Pippen, a young player who had shown flashes of brilliance but had not yet reached his full potential, started to emerge as a key contributor. Pippen's versatility and defensive prowess were a perfect complement to Jordan's scoring ability. Together, they formed one of the most dynamic duos in NBA history. As the 1985-86 season progressed, Jordan continued to grow, and his leadership began to shine. He was averaging a league-high 37.1 points per game, showing that he was already one of the most dominant players in the game. But the team was still struggling to compete at the highest level. Despite Jordan's brilliance, the Bulls were knocked out of the playoffs in the first round by the Boston Celtics, a team that would go on to win the NBA championship that year. The Celtics, led by Larry Bird, were one of the most dominant teams of the 1980s. They were a well-coached, well-balanced squad that relied on both offensive firepower and defensive toughness. The Bulls, despite Jordan's extraordinary individual play, couldn't match the Celtics' collective strength. Jordan, frustrated by the loss, took it personally. He knew that the path to greatness would not be easy, but he was determined to find a way to lead his team to championship glory. The 1986-87 season marked another step in Jordan's evolution as a player. He continued to dominate individually, but this time, he did it in a more refined way. His game had matured, and he had learned to adjust to the demands of a team-oriented approach. He finished the season with a career-high 37.1 points per game, a feat that would earn him his first scoring title. Jordan's growth as a player was undeniable, but he knew that individual accolades weren't enough. He needed to turn the Bulls into a championship contender. Jordan's early years in the NBA were defined by individual brilliance, but they were also marked by the harsh reality of playing on a team that lacked the necessary pieces to compete at the highest level. He had learned what it took to be great, but he still had much to learn about leadership and team dynamics. His rookie season was just the beginning of what would become a legendary career, but it was clear that in order to reach the pinnacle of the NBA, Jordan would need more than just his individual talent. He would need to turn the Chicago Bulls into a championship team. By the late 1980s, Michael Jordan had established himself as one of the brightest stars in the NBA, but despite his individual brilliance, the Chicago Bulls were still struggling to achieve postseason success. While Jordan's talent was undeniable, it was clear that he couldn't carry the load alone. The Bulls were often thwarted by a powerful force in the Eastern Conference, the Detroit Pistons. The Detroit Pistons, led by the fiery Isaiah Thomas and the imposing presence of players like Bill Laimbeer, Rick Mahorn, and Dennis Rodman, were the embodiment of toughness in the NBA. Their brand of basketball was physical, aggressive, and often downright brutal. They were known as the Bad Boys, a nickname that didn't just reflect their style of play, but their mentality. The Pistons were a team that believed in bullying their opponents into submission, and for years, they had the Chicago Bulls number. Jordan's first encounter with the Pistons in the postseason was in the 1985-86 playoffs. The Pistons, who had already made a name for themselves as the dominant team in the East, steamrolled the Bulls in a first-round matchup. Jordan played well, but the Pistons' physical defense took its toll. Despite Jordan's 63-point performance in Game 2 of that series, still the most points ever scored in a playoff game by a single player, Detroit's physicality ultimately shut down the Bulls' offense, and the Pistons moved on to the next round. This was the first of many brutal lessons Jordan would face at the hands of the Pistons. The following season saw Jordan and the Bulls run into the Pistons again and again in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was clear that if Jordan and the Bulls wanted to reach the NBA Finals, they would have to go through Detroit. Each year, the Pistons' defense seemed to get more and more effective at neutralizing Jordan. They employed a strategy known as the Jordan Rules, which involved double and triple teaming him, forcing him to give up the ball or punish him physically whenever he drove to the basket. The Pistons played defense with an edge, often pushing the limits of what was legal, and Jordan had to learn to survive in this intense environment. In the 1988 Eastern Conference Finals, the Pistons defeated the Bulls in a grueling 7-game series. Jordan played his heart out, but the Pistons' defense, led by Laimbeer and Mahorn, wore him down. The Bulls were still a young team, and despite Jordan's incredible individual performances, they weren't ready to dethrone the Pistons. Jordan, though frustrated, wasn't deterred. He took each loss personally, but he also recognized that in order to win, he needed to become more than just a great scorer. He needed to elevate his teammates and improve his overall game. The next few seasons saw Jordan focus on becoming more well-rounded as a player. He understood that if he wanted to break through Detroit's defenses, he would need more than just scoring. His leadership and playmaking abilities would need to evolve. Jordan spent the offseason refining his jump shot, improving his passing, and enhancing his basketball IQ. He began to trust his teammates more, learning to play within a system rather than relying solely on his individual brilliance. By the time the 1990-91 season came around, the Bulls had made significant strides. Jordan was still the focal point of the team, but now he had the help of Scottie Pippen, who had blossomed into one of the most versatile players in the league. Pippen's defense, rebounding, and ability to contribute on offense made him the perfect complement to Jordan. The Bulls had also added other key players, like Horace Grant and B.J. Armstrong, who helped round out the team and provide depth. The Bulls were no longer just Jordan and a bunch of role players, they were a legitimate championship contender. The 1991 Eastern Conference Finals marked a pivotal moment in both Jordan's career and the history of the Chicago Bulls. After years of falling short, the Bulls finally got their chance to take on the Pistons again. The Pistons, now the reigning champions of the East, were as tough and aggressive as ever, but this time, the Bulls were ready. Jordan had learned from every defeat, and now he was able to utilize his new skills, leadership, and trust in his teammates to break down the Pistons' defense. Game 1 of the 1991 Eastern Conference Finals set the tone for the series. The Bulls came out with an intensity and focus that the Pistons couldn't match. Jordan and Pippen played flawlessly, and the Bulls handed Detroit a commanding 108-105 victory. The win wasn't just about the score, it was about Jordan finally overcoming the psychological barrier the Pistons had built. For the first time, the Bulls looked like the better team. They were playing with confidence, and the Pistons, though still formidable, were being outplayed in every facet of the game. As the series progressed, it became clear that the Bulls had not just improved, they had surpassed the Pistons. In Game 4, the Bulls completed a shocking sweep of the Pistons, defeating them 4-0. It wasn't just the fact that the Bulls had beaten the Pistons, it was the manner in which they had done it. Detroit had been the gold standard in the East for years, and the Bulls had now become the top team in the conference. Jordan's leadership and the growth of his teammates had made all the difference. The Bulls' dominance over the Pistons wasn't just a symbol of their talent, it was a reflection of their mental toughness and their commitment to working together as a team. The 1991 victory over the Pistons wasn't just a playoff series win, it was a turning point for both Jordan and the Bulls. It was the moment when Jordan proved that he could lead a team to greatness, and it set the stage for the dynasty that was about to unfold. The Bulls would go on to win their first NBA championship in 1991, defeating the Los Angeles Lakers in the finals. Jordan was named Finals MVP, and the world now knew that he wasn't just the best player in the league, he was one of the greatest players of all time. But the victory over the Pistons wasn't just about winning a series, it was about overcoming years of frustration and proving that greatness could be achieved through hard work, leadership, and sacrifice. For Jordan, it was a moment of redemption. He had faced his demons, both on and off the court, and had finally risen to the occasion. The Pistons had been the team that had stood in his way for years, but now, Jordan had shown that nothing, no matter how tough or intimidating, could stop him from achieving his goals. The rivalry with the Pistons may have ended with the Bulls' victory, but the lessons Jordan learned from those battles would stay with him throughout his career. The road to greatness wasn't easy, but Jordan had proven that with the right mindset, determination, and team support, anything was possible. He had learned that no obstacle, no matter how imposing, could keep him from reaching the pinnacle of his sport. And in the years to come, those lessons would serve him and the Bulls as they set out to create a dynasty that would define the 1990s. The rivalry with the Pistons was over, but Michael Jordan's journey was just beginning. In 1991, Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls faced a new chapter in their journey to greatness. For Jordan, it was the culmination of years of hard work, frustration, and self-improvement. For the team, it marked the end of an era dominated by the Detroit Pistons and the beginning of an unstoppable dynasty. After finally overcoming their biggest rival in the Pistons, the Bulls found themselves facing the Los Angeles Lakers in the 1991 NBA Finals. This was Jordan's chance to prove that his years of individual brilliance could be matched with team success. The pressure was immense, but the timing couldn't have been better. Jordan's first finals appearance was not just a showcase of his talent, it was a demonstration of his evolution as a leader. The Chicago Bulls had already been to the Eastern Conference Finals multiple times, but this was their first real opportunity to capture an NBA championship. And in many ways, it was Jordan's first real opportunity to prove that he could lead a team to the ultimate prize. The Lakers, with their mix of veterans like Magic Johnson and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and their youthful energy, were no pushovers. They were seasoned, they were battle-tested, and they had a wealth of finals experience. Yet, the stage was set for something entirely different. As Game 1 of the finals kicked off in Chicago, the atmosphere was electric. The Bulls had finally reached the stage they had always dreamed of, and their star player was ready to show that he could handle the pressure. Jordan was not just an exceptional scorer, he had grown into a complete player. His passing had improved, and his defense was becoming just as important to the team's success. The Bulls had become more than just a collection of talented players, they were a cohesive unit with a collective goal, to win the championship. But all eyes were on Jordan, and his ability to perform on the grand stage would determine whether the team could break through. From the start of the finals, Jordan's play was nothing short of spectacular. In Game 1, he led the Bulls to a 108-105 victory, scoring 36 points and showcasing his ability to dominate both offensively and defensively. His performance was just the beginning, setting the tone for the series. In many ways, Game 1 was the confirmation of what the Bulls had been building toward. The win wasn't just about the points Jordan scored, it was about his leadership and his ability to step up when it mattered most. This was no longer about just his talent, it was about making the players around him better and creating a winning environment. Game 2 saw Jordan continue his brilliance. While the Lakers were a formidable opponent, they struggled to match Jordan's intensity. His scoring, combined with the versatility of Scottie Pippen, who had grown into a legitimate star, proved too much for the Lakers to handle. Jordan dropped 29 points and recorded 13 assists in a dominant 107-86 victory. The Bulls were not just winning, they were dominating, and Jordan's all-around play was the reason why. With the series shifting to Los Angeles, the Lakers were looking to make adjustments, but Jordan's confidence was at an all-time high. The Lakers weren't going to roll over, but the Bulls were playing with a renewed sense of purpose. Jordan wasn't just focused on scoring, he was focused on winning. His ability to create plays for others while maintaining his own scoring prowess was a testament to his growth as a player and as a leader. The Bulls would go on to win Game 3 with another commanding performance. With Jordan contributing 30 points and making critical plays down the stretch, the Bulls took a 3-0 series lead. It was now clear to everyone watching, Michael Jordan was on the verge of greatness. His performance was transcendent, not just because of his scoring, but because of how he lifted the entire team. The team was playing with confidence, and their defense was smothering the Lakers, not allowing them to execute their offense as effectively as they had in previous rounds. Heading into Game 4, Jordan knew that this could be the game that would seal his legacy as an NBA champion. Despite the Lakers' experience, the momentum was squarely in the Bulls' favor. Game 4 was close, but Jordan's leadership was evident. He didn't just rely on scoring, he became more involved in the team's defense and made key assists when the Bulls needed them most. The Bulls were playing with the kind of chemistry that every championship team needs, and it showed in their 108-105 win to close out the series 4-1. Jordan's performance in the finals was nothing short of spectacular. He averaged 31.2 points, 6.6 rebounds, and 11.4 assists per game throughout the series, leading the Bulls to their first NBA championship in franchise history. Jordan was named Finals MVP, and his dominance was on full display. But what made his performance even more remarkable wasn't just the numbers, it was how he led his team. He had not only proved to the world that he could score, but that he could make the players around him better, that he could elevate his team when it mattered most. For Jordan, winning the 1991 NBA Finals wasn't just about proving his greatness to the world, it was about proving to himself that all the sacrifices, all the hours in the gym, all the setbacks were worth it. This championship was the culmination of his growth as a player, as a leader, and as a person. The win signified his transformation from an individual star to a complete player capable of leading a team to victory. His success wasn't just about his personal achievements, it was about the realization that greatness was achieved through teamwork, trust, and leadership. The 1991 championship also marked the beginning of a new era in the NBA. The Chicago Bulls, led by Jordan, were no longer a team that relied on one or two players to carry them. The Bulls had become a team that played with cohesion and balance, and they were a formidable force in the league. Jordan had proven that he was not just the best individual player in the league, he was a player capable of carrying a team to the ultimate success. This victory was just the beginning of what would become a dynasty. But Jordan's journey to this point had not been easy. It had been filled with failures, setbacks, and moments of doubt. His first championship win was the result of years of hard work, resilience, and a deep belief in himself and his teammates. The road to the NBA Finals had been a long and difficult one, but the victory was a testament to everything Jordan had overcome. Jordan's victory in 1991 wasn't just about basketball, it was about leadership, resilience, and the will to succeed. He had faced adversity, pushed through challenges, and proved that he was not just the best player in the league, but the best player in the world. The 1991 NBA championship wasn't just a moment of triumph for Jordan, it was a turning point in his career, and it would be the foundation for the dynasty the Bulls would build in the years to come. The championship was just the beginning, and for Jordan, there was more to come. He had proven that with the right mindset, anything was possible. The summer of 1993 was a turning point in Michael Jordan's life. After securing his third consecutive NBA championship and winning his third straight Finals MVP, Jordan stunned the sports world by announcing his sudden retirement from basketball. The timing was shocking. Jordan had reached the pinnacle of his sport, yet he chose to walk away from the game. The reasons for his departure were personal, rooted in grief, burnout, and a desire for something new. His father, James Jordan Sr., had been tragically murdered in 1993, and this event had a profound impact on Michael. It wasn't just the pain of losing a father, but the way in which the grief seemed to overshadow every aspect of his life. The pressures of being the best player in the world, the relentless media scrutiny, and the expectations that followed Jordan wherever he went, all began to take a toll. Michael Jordan wasn't just a basketball player, he was an icon, a global symbol of excellence and success. With that kind of fame came an immense pressure. His life, once relatively private, had become a never-ending spotlight. He had been the face of the NBA and the face of his generation, but in 1993, it all seemed too much. Jordan had poured himself into basketball for years, but he was mentally exhausted. The loss of his father, someone who had been more than just a parent but a guiding presence in his life, made him reassess everything. Jordan stepped away from the game, leaving behind a championship-winning dynasty and the question of whether he would ever return. In a decision that stunned the world, Jordan traded his basketball shoes for a baseball glove. His father had always loved baseball, and after his passing, Jordan sought solace in the sport. Jordan signed a minor league contract with the Chicago White Sox and was assigned to play for the Birmingham Barons, a Double-A affiliate. For a man who had dominated the basketball world, his transition to baseball was met with skepticism. Many doubted his ability to succeed in a sport he had not played seriously in years. But for Jordan, this wasn't about proving anyone wrong, this was about finding peace. Jordan's first year in baseball was difficult. He was no longer the superstar, instead, he was a player trying to prove himself in a new sport. His batting average with the Barons hovered around .202, and while his work ethic was evident, the results weren't what he was used to. But for Jordan, this was a different kind of challenge. Baseball, with its slower pace and different rhythm, allowed him to step outside of the spotlight and away from the intense pressure that had defined his life. It was an escape, but it was also a challenge that pushed him in new ways. As the 1994 season came to a close, it became clear that Jordan was not going to reach the major leagues anytime soon. Despite his commitment and undeniable talent, baseball was a sport that required years of development, and Jordan had been out of the game for too long. Yet, there was something significant in the time he spent away from basketball. He had the opportunity to reflect on his life, his legacy, and what he truly wanted. In March 1995, after a brief hiatus from the game, Jordan announced his return to the NBA with a simple but powerful statement: "I'm back." The sports world erupted, as one of the greatest players in history was coming out of retirement. But there were questions. Could Jordan still be the player he once was? Had the year off from basketball and his time in baseball taken a toll on his game? His return wasn't just about rejoining the NBA, it was about reclaiming his place as the greatest. Jordan's re-entry into the league was met with both excitement and skepticism. He came back not at the peak of his career, but at a point where many wondered whether his best years were behind him. He was 32 years old, an age at which many players begin to experience a decline. Still, there was no denying the impact Jordan's presence had on the Chicago Bulls. When he returned, he rejoined a team that had continued to find success without him. Scottie Pippen had blossomed as a leader, and players like Tony Kukoc and Steve Kerr had grown in importance. The chemistry was solid, but the Bulls were missing something: their leader. In his first game back on March 19, 1995, Jordan wore the number 45, which was a nod to a fresh start after his time away. The United Center was packed, and the buzz was palpable. Jordan didn't disappoint, scoring 19 points in his return against the Indiana Pacers. The game ended in a loss, but the message was clear: Michael Jordan was back. His skills were a bit rusty, but the competitive fire, the will to win, and the undeniable presence were there. The process of reintegrating into the team would take time, but Jordan's return was already having an immediate effect on the Bulls. As the 1995 season progressed, Jordan's game began to return to form. He wasn't yet the player who had dominated the NBA for 3 consecutive seasons, but his leadership was starting to shine through again. The Bulls, though not quite the same team as they had been before, began to find their rhythm with Jordan back in the lineup. But it was evident that the road to championship contention wasn't as simple as just inserting Jordan back into the starting lineup. The team was still learning how to operate with their star player back, and the dynamics of the NBA had shifted in his absence. Jordan's first playoff appearance after his return came in the 1995 Eastern Conference semifinals, where the Bulls faced the Orlando Magic. The Magic, led by the emerging duo of Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway, were a team on the rise. The Magic had finished the season with the best record in the East, and they were confident in their ability to challenge the Bulls. Game 1 was a harbinger of what was to come. Jordan wasn't quite the same player, and the Bulls struggled against the Magic's young and energetic team. Orlando took a commanding 3-1 series lead, and the Bulls were on the brink of elimination. Despite Jordan's best efforts, the Bulls were unable to overcome the Magic that year. The loss was disappointing, but it was also a critical moment for Jordan and the team. It underscored that a team built on individual talent needed more than just one player to win championships. The 1995 playoff defeat was a humbling reminder that championship teams were built on more than just one superstar. They required balance, teamwork, and trust. Jordan, however, wasn't one to back down from adversity. The loss served as a catalyst for the Bulls. Jordan used it as motivation in the offseason, working tirelessly to refine his game. He would return for the 1995-96 season, not just as a scorer but as a more complete player, capable of elevating those around him. The fire that had driven Jordan in his early career was now burning even brighter. The loss to the Magic wasn't the end, it was simply the beginning of what would become one of the most dominant runs in NBA history. Jordan's comeback wasn't just about returning to the game, it was about proving that even after taking time off, he could still be the best. And in the 1995-96 season, he would demonstrate exactly that. With his return to full form, the Bulls would go on to win the NBA championship, starting a new dynasty that would dominate the league for the next several years. Michael Jordan's return to the NBA in March 1995 was a moment of unparalleled excitement. The world had watched as the Chicago Bulls dominated the NBA during his first run, winning 3 straight championships in the early 1990s. But when Jordan suddenly retired following his 3rd championship, leaving the Bulls without their leader, fans and teammates alike wondered if the team could maintain its success. The answer, in short, was no, at least not in the way they had before. But that was all about to change when Jordan made his highly anticipated return. Jordan's time away from basketball had been defined by personal loss, a period that included the heartbreaking murder of his father, James Jordan Sr., in 1993. For Michael, basketball was no longer just a game, it was a means of connection to the one person who had always been there for him. With his father's tragic passing, Jordan stepped away, seeking solace in baseball, a sport his father had loved. But as time passed, the NBA world began to realize that the greatest basketball player of all time wasn't just on a break, he was taking a step back to find his purpose. When Jordan announced his return in 1995, it wasn't just a headline, it was a global event. The entire sports world was waiting to see if he could reclaim the throne that had been his for so long. The Chicago Bulls, who had spent the year adjusting to life without their leader, were now faced with the challenge of reintegrating Jordan into the fold. The team was still talented, with stars like Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant, but the chemistry was different. Jordan had been the heart and soul of the team, and without him, they had struggled to find the same level of dominance. Jordan returned to a team that had already made a name for itself without him. The Bulls had finished with a strong 47-35 record during the 1994-1995 season but had struggled in the playoffs without their leader, ultimately falling short against the Orlando Magic in the Eastern Conference semifinals. The loss exposed a gap in the team's play, the absence of Jordan's ability to take over games and elevate everyone around him. The challenge facing him upon his return wasn't just about returning to form, it was about rediscovering the team chemistry that had made the Bulls so successful in the past. In his first game back on March 19, 1995, Jordan faced the Indiana Pacers. The excitement around his return was palpable. Fans flooded the United Center in Chicago, eager to see if their idol was still the same. Jordan, wearing the number 45, his baseball number, scored 19 points in the game. The Bulls lost, but the message was clear: Jordan was back. It wasn't the explosive, unstoppable Jordan of the past, but it was a player who still had the same competitive fire. The rust was visible, but it was clear that the raw talent was still there. Jordan's comeback didn't happen overnight. He had spent nearly a year away from competitive basketball, and while he was in great shape physically, basketball is a game of rhythm, and Jordan had to regain that rhythm. His shooting wasn't as sharp as it had been during his first run with the Bulls, and his timing on both offense and defense wasn't yet at the level it once was. But Jordan's mentality had not changed. He was determined to not just return but to reclaim the game. His competitive nature, his drive to be the best, was as strong as ever. Even if he wasn't yet at his peak, he was still capable of leading the Bulls. The Bulls struggled to find their footing in the weeks following Jordan's return, and the team was still adjusting to playing with their superstar again. But Jordan's leadership quickly became evident. His presence on the floor made everyone around him better. As the season progressed, he began to gel with his teammates again, most notably Scottie Pippen. Pippen, who had grown into one of the league's top players during Jordan's absence, now had to share the spotlight again. But instead of clashing egos, Pippen stepped up and embraced his role as the team's co-leader. The chemistry between Jordan and Pippen was undeniable. Together, they became one of the best duos in NBA history. As the playoffs approached, Jordan was starting to look more like his old self. His scoring, playmaking, and defense were all improving, and the team began to see their confidence return. However, the road ahead was not going to be easy. The Bulls still had to face off against some of the best teams in the league, and the first test was the defending NBA champions, the New York Knicks, in the Eastern Conference semifinals. The Knicks were a physical, defensive-minded team led by Patrick Ewing, and they were determined to make the Bulls earn every victory. The series was intense, full of grit and determination, and Jordan played with the kind of intensity that had become synonymous with his name. His performance in Game 1, where he scored 36 points and hit clutch shots down the stretch, was a statement to the league. Michael Jordan was back. Despite not being at his absolute peak, Jordan was still capable of carrying the team. The Bulls went on to defeat the Knicks in a hard-fought series, and Jordan's leadership continued to shine through. The Eastern Conference Finals brought a new challenge, the Orlando Magic. The Magic, with their talented young duo of Shaquille O'Neal and Penny Hardaway, had emerged as a team on the rise. The series was expected to be a battle, but few expected the outcome that would follow. In a stunning turn of events, the Bulls were eliminated by the Magic in a 4-2 series defeat. It was a heartbreaking loss for Jordan, but it was also a learning experience. The Bulls were not yet a fully cohesive unit. Despite Jordan's return, the Magic were able to exploit some weaknesses in the Bulls' defense and team play. Jordan had to face the reality that the team wasn't as dominant as it had been in previous years. The loss was a setback, but it was far from the end. Jordan's time in the 1995 playoffs showed that he was still a top-tier player, but it also made clear that the Bulls had work to do. The defeat served as a wake-up call, and Jordan used it as motivation in the offseason. He was not satisfied with just returning to the game, he wanted to win again. The next season, he would come back with a vengeance, more determined than ever. When the 1995-96 season began, the Bulls were a different team. They were more balanced, more experienced, and more determined. With Jordan back at full strength, the team quickly reasserted itself as the best in the NBA. The addition of players like Tony Kukoc, Steve Kerr, and Ron Harper gave the team the depth it had been missing the previous year. The offense was more fluid, and the defense, led by Jordan and Pippen, was suffocating. The 1995-96 Chicago Bulls went on to finish the regular season with a remarkable 72-10 record, setting an NBA record for the most wins in a single season. Jordan, back in championship form, was named Finals MVP once again as the Bulls defeated the Seattle Supersonics in 6 games to capture their 4th title. Jordan's comeback had been completed. He had not only returned to the NBA, but he had brought the Bulls back to the top, proving that he was still the best player in the game. This was the beginning of another dynasty, one that would define the NBA for the next few years. Jordan's return to basketball wasn't just about returning to form, it was about showing the world that he was capable of greatness, no matter the odds. His time away from the game had given him a new perspective, and his return was a statement to everyone. Michael Jordan wasn't just a basketball player, he was an icon, a force of nature, and a player who could still conquer any challenge, no matter the circumstances. Michael Jordan's career has been marked by a series of defining moments that not only cemented his place as the greatest basketball player of all time, but also shaped the culture of the NBA and the world of sports. From his rise in the mid-1980s to his first retirement in 1993, his return to the league in 1995, and the creation of a second dynasty with the Chicago Bulls, Jordan's story has been one of triumph, resilience, and unrelenting greatness. The 1998 NBA Finals, which would be Jordan's final chapter with the Bulls, was a culmination of his journey, a journey filled with hard-fought battles, emotional comebacks, and moments that would become legend. The 1998 season had been one of the most challenging of Jordan's career. At 35 years old, after already accomplishing everything a player could dream of, he was still leading the Bulls with unmatched intensity. But this time, it was different. There were whispers about his age, about the team's ability to win another championship, and about whether Jordan could carry the team through another playoff run. Behind the scenes, tension was brewing as the organization made it clear that 1998 would be the last season of this iteration of the Bulls. General manager Jerry Krause had already decided to part ways with coach Phil Jackson after the season, signaling that this would be the end of the dynasty. The stakes were incredibly high, but Jordan was no stranger to high-pressure situations. The Bulls entered the 1998 playoffs as the favorites, but their road to the finals would not be easy. In the Eastern Conference Finals, the Bulls faced a familiar foe, the Indiana Pacers, led by Reggie Miller, one of the most clutch players in the league. The series went to 7 games, a true test of Jordan's leadership and ability to perform under pressure. But as always, when the stakes were highest, Jordan delivered. In Game 7, he scored 28 points and led the Bulls to an 88-83 victory, pushing the team into the finals once again. The victory was a reminder that, despite the challenges, Jordan still had what it took to lead the Bulls to the promised land. The 1998 NBA Finals matched the Bulls up against the Utah Jazz, who had been knocking on the door of a championship for years. Led by the talented Karl Malone and the clutch shooting of John Stockton, the Jazz were determined to dethrone the Bulls. The series quickly became a back-and-forth battle between the two teams. The first few games were close, but the tension continued to build. Every game was a test, not just for the Bulls as a team, but for Jordan as the leader and the heart of the franchise. Game 5 of the finals was one of the most dramatic moments in NBA history. With the series tied 2-2, the game was pivotal for both teams. In the final moments, Jordan found himself with the ball in his hands, with the Bulls trailing by 1 point. He had already led the team through countless pressure-filled moments in his career, but this was different. The pressure was immense. This could very well be his last chance to win another championship with the Bulls. Jordan took the ball at the top of the key and made a move toward the basket. As he dribbled, he faked a shot, forcing the Jazz's Byron Russell to bite on the move. Jordan then stepped back, pulled up, and sank a jumper with 5.2 seconds left, giving the Bulls a 1-point lead and putting them on the cusp of their 6th NBA championship. The shot, known as the last shot, was the culmination of his career, a moment of brilliance that would be remembered forever. The Bulls won the game 87-86 and took a 3-2 series lead. In Game 6, the Bulls were able to close out the series with a 90-86 victory, winning their 6th NBA championship. Jordan's final performance in the finals was nothing short of legendary. He finished with 45 points, carrying the Bulls to a victory and securing his 6th Finals MVP award. The victory wasn't just about the championship itself, it was about the legacy that Jordan had built. In that final game, Jordan wasn't just playing for another title, he was playing for his place in history. He had faced countless obstacles throughout his career, from being cut from his high school basketball team to taking time off from the game to deal with personal loss, but he had always returned stronger. And now, in his final season with the Bulls, he had led the team to one last championship, solidifying his legacy as the greatest to ever play the game. Jordan's retirement after the 1998 season was the end of an era. The Bulls would go on to rebuild, and Jordan would leave behind a team that had redefined what it meant to be successful in the NBA. But Jordan's impact was not confined to the Bulls' locker room. His influence had transcended basketball. The NBA, thanks to his global appeal, had grown into a worldwide phenomenon. Jordan's style of play, his work ethic, and his sheer will to win had inspired countless young athletes across the globe. His brand, Air Jordan, revolutionized the sportswear industry and became a cultural icon in its own right. Michael Jordan wasn't just a player, he was a global brand, an ambassador for the game, and a symbol of excellence in sports. Jordan's final retirement from basketball was not the end of his story. While he had achieved everything on the court, his life after basketball took on new dimensions. He became the principal owner of the Charlotte Hornets, bringing his expertise and passion for the game into the management side of the sport. His time as an executive was a new challenge, but his competitive spirit remained as strong as ever. He was determined to bring success to the Hornets, just as he had done with the Bulls. But it was the moments on the court that would define Jordan's legacy for generations to come. His 6 championships, 5 MVP awards, and 10 scoring titles are just a small part of what he accomplished. His impact on the game was much deeper. He changed the way the game was played, the way it was viewed, and the way future generations of athletes approached their craft. Jordan was more than just a player, he was a symbol of dedication, discipline, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. In the years following his retirement, Jordan's legacy only grew. He was inducted into the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame in 2009, solidifying his place as one of the greatest to ever play the game. But his influence extended far beyond basketball. His work ethic, his competitive drive, and his focus on achieving excellence became a blueprint for athletes in every sport. He proved that greatness wasn't just about talent, it was about effort, passion, and an unwavering belief in your ability to succeed. Michael Jordan's story is one of perseverance, excellence, and impact. His career has been a blueprint for how to face adversity, how to lead with grace under pressure, and how to rise to the occasion in the most critical moments. The legacy of Michael Jordan is not just about the championships or the accolades. It's about the inspiration he provided for generations of athletes and fans who saw in him the embodiment of what it means to be great. His story isn't just a chapter in NBA history, it's a testament to the power of hard work, the strength of character, and the unyielding pursuit of greatness. Michael Jordan wasn't just the greatest basketball player to ever live, he was the personification of what it means to achieve greatness, and his legacy will live on for generations to come.